Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Sunday at about 10:38. So yeah, I've been really digging. I've been buying a ton of new movies and I've been working my way through them and I've been posting some new videos as I go. And it's been a blast. It's been a lot of cool movies that I haven't seen before. I went to a couple of newer places. Well, one new place recently called the Record Connection in Waterville, which is a pretty sweet place. I had heard about it, and they have all kinds of clothes that they sell. Then they sell mostly records, and then they have a shit ton of movies, and also CDs and cassettes. Very cool shop. It was a really great discovery. I bought a lot of jazz CDs there. I bought some movies, and I've been working my way through that. And the only thing I didn't have, or that they don't have, is they don't really carry any Blu-rays. But I still buy DVDs. I'm pretty sporadic. I try not to buy too many DVDs just because it takes up a lot of space. And as a collector and as a fan, I really love seeking out Blu-rays. That's to me is it's like the ultimate way to see a movie, especially watching it at home, and then as being a collector. So this is another video on a movie that I recently just bought up at. I got it in. What did I get it? I think I got it in Brunswick. During last week was vacation, so I had a bunch of time off, and I went to the Bull Moose in Brunswick, Maine, which is about an hour and a half from here. So very, very cool. I bought a ton of movies, so it's been great. I've been slowly, sifting my way through them and checking them out. A lot of new ones that I hadn't seen before. A couple I've seen in the past, but it's been years. And I want to also thank a lot of the new subscribers that have been joining this great little circus that I have. I've been in the past. This past month I did a few interviews. The interview segments that I do on this channel. That's my favorite thing to do. So I've been able to do. I had about 3 or 4 shows recently that I did. So that's been a blast. So those have been up, and appreciate people checking out those videos. And I want to again, appreciate the new people coming on board to subscribe to this channel. And there's been a lot of people commenting on the videos, which has been really awesome. And that's the thing, that's the other coolest thing of, besides doing interview segments, my favorite thing is just to kind of correspond with other people out there that are just really into movies also. So it's been a blast. So today's show is on a movie that, and it's funny because I did a review a couple of days ago on this movie that is going to be uploaded pretty soon. And then I also bought another movie which I had heard a lot about, and I did see it once or twice when I was a kid. So, but both movies were movies that were on my radar for a long time. And I bought them because I thought they looked awesome and I really wanted to buy them, and they were pretty cheap. But I didn't realize that they were the actual movies that I had been kind of seeking out, movies that were definitely on my radar until after the fact. And then I was like, oh, wow, awesome. The one show that's coming up is this movie called, which is just totally insane, called the Infernal Rapist. This Mexican grindhouse movie that is just it's got to be one of the most bonkers movies I've ever seen. It's totally insane. Stay tuned for that. That's going to be coming up. It's going to be posted pretty soon. I just was blown away by that movie. And this next review that I'm doing is on another movie, which is, again, I was just totally blown away by. I had seen it probably a handful of times when I was a kid, and that is this movie called The Burning. I had heard about this movie quite a bit from it came up in a few different YouTube people that I watched that do movie reviews. This movie came up a few times, The Burning, and in a few of a few of these guys and girls that were talking about this movie, they were talking about how this was like one of the best. They felt it was one of the best classic '80s slasher movies ever made, and when I bought it, I was like, okay, this looks really cool, but I didn't put two and two together that it was the movie to seek out, and then I realized a couple of days after I actually sat down and watched it, or a couple of days after I actually bought it, and then I sat down and watched it, that this was that movie that was really on my radar for a while, and this is a just such an incredible movie, classic slash movie. It came out in 1981. It was directed by Tony Malum. Came out in '81. The practical effects were all done by the iconic Tom Savini, which was another factor around this movie that I was just totally enamored with and totally blown away with. Tom Savini was, the premier special effects guys, the guy in the '70s and '80s as far as all of the amazing slasher horror exploitation movies that came out. And I've always said that, and it's even more, it's even more true now. In the exploitation world, you have or I should say, in the horror genre, you have these subgenres, and my favorite has always been, for the most part, and even more so now than the last few years, has been the sleazy world of all things exploitation. And of course, horror exploitation is my favorite, or my favorite general genre, but my favorite subgenre, my favorite genre of all time, is the classic slasher genre. So I was super excited. I was super stoked, and I watched this a few days ago, and it was literally watching it for the first time. I saw this movie a couple times when I was a kid, and it was back during the days of the VHS era, and I think it was probably on cable once or twice on one of the late night TV shows. When I grew up, there was like two or three kind of midnight movie series that were on like certain cable channels, where like it would be on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and they would basically show it would be like this horror movie marathon. So and I was I'm a product of the '80s, so I kind of grew up with that as one of my big integral things, is like being turned on to horror movies. And I remember as a kid watching some of those late night horror movie-thons and staying up like super late till like 2 in the morning, and they would show like 3 or 4 of these classic sleazy kind of slasher movies. And I remember seeing of course they would movies like Halloween was on syndication regularly. I would see that, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, of course the Friday the 13th movies. But I remember as a kid also seeing the movies that were a little bit more obscure, like House by the Cemetery, The Gates of Hell, Mad Men, movies like My Bloody Valentine, and movies like this, The Burning. And they would show all of these classic kind of underground slasher movies. And then that was also kind of the emergence, that period was also kind of the emergence of like VHS. And just, as a kid going into the rental stores at the time and just being enamored with all of the amazing artwork, like that you would see on in the aisles for all of these, incredible slasher movies. And it was an amazing period. And it was like it was the best period. And fast forward many years later, a lot of those movies now are getting the royal treatment by being released on 4K or Blu-ray, and it was amazing. And so back then too, it wasn't really possible to buy a lot of these movies. You could buy VHS, but it was harder, and a lot of titles you couldn't find, but it wasn't really a thing at that time. And the other thing was a lot of the VHS editions of a lot of these classic slasher exploitation movies. A lot of them were cut, like edited by different companies. So you would have certain slasher movies where whole scenes would be cut out, certain gory or certain gore scenes, or basically certain explicit scenes that were in the movie were sometimes cut for marketing reasons, and things like that. And then a lot of the times too, the the quality the quality wasn't very good. So the actual video quality and the audio for a lot of the VHS tapes, because a lot of them were bootleg too, and they were like second or third editions or copies. They the copies were not very great, were not very good. The quality wasn't so exciting. But with this kind of treatment, it's just amazing. And the transfer of this movie, The Burning, is just amazing. And there's so many great special features. There's a awesome little mini documentary with Tom Savini on here that is just so killer, pun intended. And he talks, Tom Savini, again, almost legendary, probably the most iconic figure in the world of practical effects. I mean, there was a time in the 70s, late 70s, and into the mid 80s, early 80s, into the mid 80s, into the late 80s, he worked on virtually every horror movie, every slasher movie that was made. And he, just amazing. Tom Savini, most famously did the effects for the first Friday the 13th movie. And then he also did the effects for my favorite slasher movie of all time, Bill Luswig's Maniac, which to me is the greatest slasher movie ever made. And this movie is so awesome. I mean, it's super gory, it's brutal as all hell. There's so much great suspense. And the other thing that's cool about this movie, and Tom Savini talks about it, again, the cast is really great in this movie. Lou David plays Cropsey, who is the killer. Jason Alexander, who went on to become a very famous character actor and comedian, and most notably Seinfeld. He's like super young in this, and he's awesome in it. And it was a trip to see that he was in this. This was like his first movie. Holly Hunter, Fisher Stevens, Brian Backer, Lynn Ayers, Carolyn Houlihan. Just an amazing cast. A lot of these actors and actresses went on to become pretty iconic character actors. And Jason Alexander probably being the biggest. But in the documentary on this movie, where they talk about Tom Savini, he said that this movie, he feels that The Burning is pretty different from a lot of the other slasher movies in regards to how the characters are. In a lot of the other slasher movies, and he was talking about, say, like Friday the 13th, where he said, well, typically, you have the mass killer who is going around picking off all the teenagers while they're, having sex. And they're usually in, like, either the woods or some kind of cabin or some kind of creepy house. And you always have that kind of typical trope for a lot of these slasher movies. But he said, a lot of the times for these slasher movies, you kind of can't wait for the kids to be killed or slaughtered because they're kind of annoying or they're kind of jerks, and or they've kind of done some terrible things. But he felt that the burning is different because the dynamic is different around the cast and the story, and the characters, where you kind of have empathy for these characters, so you kind of don't want to see them die, and they're kind of innocent, so it creates a different kind of tension around the movie. And I definitely think it's true. It has, in that regard, it is a different kind of a slasher movie where you do have a little bit more empathy for the characters for what it is. So the stakes are a little bit higher. You don't really necessarily want to see the kids get slaughtered. So it is different in that regard. But the kills are amazing. The atmosphere is so awesome. This movie is, it's one of the best. It's easily one of the best slasher movies I think ever made. I would feel safe in saying that I think that this is, this could be put in a list of, like, say, the top 15 or 20 slasher movies, greatest slasher movies ever made. It's amazing. And so I was super excited. I bought this not realizing that this was one of the movies I kept hearing about, and that this was a movie I saw in my youth. That was a really great experience. And just the experience of, like, fast forwarding many, many years later to where I can own this now on Blu-ray and actually own it. And it's just awesome. For me, physical media is where it's at. And, I hope this kind of thing never goes away, because I don't know, I've made videos about the whole streaming kind of world that we're in, and how physical media, a lot of people are saying it's going away, and then and that it's dying, and people don't go to the movies anymore. They just want to watch things on their iPhones or their TVs. And I get it. It's fine. It is what it is, and and all of these things are there just because I really think at the end of the day, the way technology has grown so exponentially, and in regards to specifically, movies and physical media, it's not due to some kind of, corporate conspiracy. It's not like some kind of wacky thing like, oh, it's the robots are taking over, or there's some kind of shadow conspiracy going on. I think these things are happening just because, well, there's a demand for it, and there's a demand for it, but then people are also, they kind of just let these things happen. There's no need to believe that there's some kind of conspiracy around it. I think that kind of mindset, or that argument, or mode of thinking can be probably more applied to the political climate that we're in. But I think it's all related. And then you have people who are, at the same time outraged and in this panic mode around it. So, but I think at the end of the day, I think the reason most people choose streaming is it's out of just pure convenience. At one point it was cheaper as far as accessing movies. It was cheaper than going to the theater, going to the video store. I don't think that's. I don't think it's any longer. I don't think it's the case anymore. Recently, like, I've been watching a few television shows and movies at my girlfriend's house, and realizing that, oh wait, looking at the prices that that they're asking to watch a movie, or to rent a movie, or to buy a movie, it's actually, I think, more expensive in the long run. And just that you can't have physical, in that format, in that way of viewing, you can't actually own a movie. You can't. For me, it's about the artwork. It's the tactile thing. and you actually own it. If you want to, if you're craving for a movie, you can just like pull it out of your shelf and you have it, and you can watch it. And there's no, it's the physical, tactile aspect of it. So that's how I've always been and will always continue to be. But so I hope this great period that we're living in, as far as physical media, never goes away. So, but I can't recommend this movie enough. The Burning. This is a classic slasher exploitation movie. Super amazing. A great example of the amazing, masterful work by the practical effects icon Tom Savini, 1981. You can't beat it. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.